I was gonna say, I don't know if you noticed, like I'm back using my SM7B.
I did notice. Yes.
And I got my old mic stand back. I had a solid piece one that I've been using for a better part of a year. It just fell apart on me the other day.
Huh.
I was dropped my and luckily this mic wasn't on here, but it was my MXL mics fell like 4 feet onto a concrete floor.
Ooh.
You know, yeah. And now luckily the mic's working. You know, but it doesn't. It's delicate. This mic you could throw down the flight of stairs. It'd be okay.
Yeah. That's a stage mic, really, isn't it? You could kick the shit out of that one.
Yeah. So I put the stage mic back on here, and it's funny. I'm appreciating this mic. Remember I told you how like this mic was kind of pissing me off, and I went to my cheaper mic and I was happier with like the extra presence and sibilance in there. And then I plugged this in to record a video voiceover for one of my LG videos the other day, and I was shocked by again how good it sounds. And it's funny. So when I'm singing into it, it doesn't inspire me, but the end result is always better as far as audio quality. So I have to switch out, put the cheap mic on when I'm writing my vocal parts, and then record the good parts on here once I get the melodies figured out.
Have you ever thought of using both? You could have a double mic and recording 2 tracks.
I probably could. Yeah. Well, Often when I sing vocals on top, I will use a different mic because it gives it like it's easier. The vocals sit together better when you use a different mic, you know,
right? Or
sit together worse.
Yeah.
And so now that you've had a little more time with that song, I sent you. Like, do you think you could do something cool with that song? You think you can make it something special?
I think so. Do you want a progress report, or do you just want to be surprised?
I kind of want to wait for the surprise because there's a certain sound I'm going for in that song, and that represents that sound I've been telling you about I have a hard time capturing. It's not the Devin Townsend sound, the Metallica sound, but I have a really hard time making high-gain guitars sit nice in the mix. And I love playing guitar. And I love playing heavy metal. So I can play those guitars, but I can't get them... Like, when I can play a synthesizer I can make sit in a mix before I even start playing, right? Whereas a guitar sounds like a guitar, then you have to figure out how to make it fit later. You know what I mean? Like, it's... Of course, a solo sits nicer on top of chords because there are different spectrums. But when you're playing a guitar chord and then you want to throw in a bass guitar in there that sounds pretty much the same, just a little bit lower, you know, it gets really muddy and it's hard for me to. And I'll do all sorts of reading because like I have good ears, I think, but I've tried all this ear training. I watch these videos all the time where I'm trying to pick frequencies out by the vowels they make, and I'm trying really hard to be able to hear a frequency without even be able to use a spectrogram, you know. And I'll adjust things based on my ears. I try not to ever adjust things in solo. I always try and adjust the EQ while listening to all the instruments so I can hearing it in relation to everything else.
Right.
And I'll think I'm getting somewhere, and then I'll listen to the mix. And I think, yeah, it's getting somewhere. Then I'll listen to the original demo I recorded before I did any mixing, and the original demo sounds better. And I'm like, that can't be, you know. And then I listen to a band I like. Like, say that song there would fit in like the way that's coming across is kind of like a Tool song, sort of. You know, so I'll listen to some Tool and I'd be like, I'm not even close to that. Not even in the same ballpark. And then I get really upset with myself. But then some of my songs, I can make them sound like that. You know, like not like Tool, but like they sound like they're punching out of the speakers the way I want. The bass is where I want it. Everything's balanced nice. And that's usually where I'm playing a little more minimalistic and I'm playing a lot of keyboards, not so much guitar. And that's why I've been getting away from playing guitar, is because I'm not happy with how my guitar sounds. Not because I don't like playing it. And it's just a shame because obviously I'm a guitar player. Like I got more guitars than anything, you know. And my wife is dumbfounded that when because she just assumed for my birthday I'd want a guitar, because she's like, what guitar do you want for your 40th birthday? And I was like, I don't really want a guitar. And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I have all these guitars. Why do I need more guitars? You know, and she's like, but you've always said you wanted a really nice acoustic guitar. You don't have a nice acoustic. And I'm like, you're right. I should have a very nice acoustic guitar, because all my acoustic guitars are like hand-me-down Yamahas that have been beaten up. Like I have one Yamaha that's got 3 holes in the body. The neck was busted off and all glued back together. And I still play it. It sounds great to me, you know, but you know, when I pick up $1,000 guitar, you know, and play it, I go, oh man, like the action, the body, the mid-range, like there's so much special. It's not just new strings, you know, there's something extra with a nice guitar like that. And you can argue tone woods all day long. Like, you know, you should have like a Les Paul and a Stratocaster. That's it. Like I got too many electric guitars, but I don't have a nice acoustics. And acoustics actually do sound different. The tone wood actually does something in an acoustic guitar. So there's a company in Ontario that makes affordable guitars here in Canada. I could get like a nice for like $1,000, maybe $800, I could get a beautiful handmade Canadian guitar. But again, I'm going like, why? I won't take it outside. I won't play it around the campfire. I will record with it. That's all I'll do with it, is record with it. And I already record with the guitars I have, and I've never had a problem with my acoustic sound. I like the way my acoustic sounds. So I had to like tamp that down. And then part of me thought like, oh, I want to get a synthesizer, right? Like, why did I get another? I'm like, why? Why another synthesizer? I have the Polybrute. I love it, and I got my Behringer DeepMind, and I have some monophonics, and I find more and more I prefer to use Pigments anyway. So it's. And not because I like Pigments more. It's just, it's right here. I don't have to get off my chair and go 2 feet over here and program a synth.
Of course, yeah.
And I can program that synth from my computer. There's an Arturia app that hooked up to my Polybrute that gives me the same controls you have on Pigments and whatnot, except for it's controlling a hardware synthesizer. So it's all there. But then you get a bit of hiss sometimes because of the ground loops and all the shit I got plugged in here. So Pigments has got no hiss unless I want it to, right? So I started thinking about that, and then I was looking at mixing boards, and I was looking at different ways to record in my studio, and then the iPod popped into my head, because I know that you love your iPod, and you've made a lot of music with your iPod. You told me about how you made whole albums riding on the bus.
The iPad.
Back and forth to work.
The iPad.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I know that's what you meant, but the listeners don't know that. The listeners don't know that you're having a moment.
Yeah. How old is this guy? He's calling them iPods and stuff?
He's running his iPods, these newfangled iPod things.
With the screen you can touch,
Yeah, it's got a screen you can touch, yeah. Yeah, well, I did love it. I haven't used it since I came back to... Well, I used it on that album that I just finished. I thought, I must revisit that, because although my keyboard skills are coming back, they're not up to where I left them. I don't know if I'll ever get them back to where I left them, because when I left them, I was quite dexterous, and I could, what I find now is that my fingers slip off the black notes for some reason. So I'll go to press the black note and I end up slipping off that onto the F or the G or something. And oh god, yes, I remember having to go through this curve before learning the lightness of touch that you need and all that. So my keyboard skills are coming back. So, but I thought I really miss that ability to soar with a solo, which I used to be able to do on keyboards before I stopped playing them so much. And it's so easy to do on the iPad, because you set the key that you want so that you can't make a mistake. And you let your imagination flow, and you just get into the moment, and you move your fingers, you let your fingers do it, and you'll hear the notes. You can move your finger around on the screen, which is the equivalent of putting in vibrato or opening a filter or something like that. So you can get this, it's really expressive. So I missed all of that. So I fired up Animoog, which is it's made by Moog, and it's a lead sort of, well, you can play chords on it too. But it's what I use for lead, and I fired that up and just recorded the audio straight into through the audio interface. Didn't bother MIDIing them up or anything. But that's the only time I've really used it since I came back to the PC in about 2020, and I would struggle to make a use case for it now. If I was somebody was giving me a gift, or if I was spending a lot of money, because the iPad Pro, the big one, it must be about £1,200 or something. I don't know. It's quite expensive. Mine was the iPad, the smaller iPad Pro from 2018, which I got myself as a retirement present. And
so would that be the 4th generation one? Do you know?
I think so. Yes, I think so.
That's the one I'm looking at, is the 4th generation iPod Pro, because I don't want to get the real expensive one. I was kind of looking at under $1,000 kind of.
Right. Well, whatever you get, you want to make sure it's not already becoming obsolete, because that's one of the things I was going to say to you, because I was sort of thinking about this when you mentioned that you were thinking about getting an iPad. The thing you've got to be aware of is that at any moment Apple can fuck you up, which the PC can't. Windows is very, very unlikely to fuck up their PC musicians, because there's so many of us. But Apple can just at the drop of a hat say, well, we don't want to do that anymore. They've messed up MIDI interfaces for people. There's been a whole bunch of custom or bespoke MIDI interfaces for the iPad, where you actually slot the iPad into like a little mixer kind of thing, so that it forms the heart of this USB based kind of thing that you've got controllers and things all on this mixer, and you know, Apple updates the operating system, and that doesn't work anymore. So there's 200 quid down the drain, you know. So they've got a record of doing that, and eventually the iPad will become your iPad, whatever you get, will become outdated, and the latest things won't work on it. That my iPad's in that state now. There's certain apps that won't work on it. So that's the dangers of it. But the joy of it is, for me, the joy of it was when I was travelling. I didn't have to cart a laptop about and things. You know, I could get my iPad out in the canteen at work when I was sitting on my own having a cup of coffee, and I could work on my track, and I could record a solo, or I could do whatever I had to do. You know, it's all there. You've got everything you need in one box that fits in your backpack, and it's brilliant. You know, for that it saved my life probably at that point, because I was desperate to find a way to be doing music more often. You know, because it was in my mind all the time. You know, and it was a friend of mine said. He was very disdainful of the iPad, but we were having a conversation about it, and he said the only thing it would be good for is touch instruments. And I thought, why didn't I think of that? Because I'd already been using the iPhone 4S, which anybody who can remember that far back, it was a tiny little screen, a 4-inch screen or something. You know,
that's what I'm using for my Bebot. When I went to Bebot solo,
yeah.
It's iPhone 4S. That's
right, iPhone 4S. Yes, well, good for you. I'm surprised it's still in the go. And
it doesn't have a SIM card in it. Doesn't make phone calls. It only Bebots. That's all it does. That's the only reason it is.
The Bebot machine. So I was using that, and I was using GarageBand, which I don't know if you've ever used GarageBand, but GarageBand on the iPad it's wonderful. It looks like a toy to begin with. To people like you and I who are used to every option being available to us, it seems like a toy, but it is actually, you can actually do some really good stuff on it, and the touch instruments within GarageBand are excellent. They really are good. That track of mine, what's it called? The one about the garden, the one that you liked. It's got an Erhu sound on it. That was done on the iPad in GarageBand.
Nice.
Oh, do you ken the Rain Temple? That was that one. Do you remember that song?
That one, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I do like that.
Well, that one was done in GarageBand. Yeah, so it's really good.
So these instruments that you're manipulating with the iPad, do they come with GarageBand, or do you have to pay extra for these other apps?
Oh, there's.
You know, and how much money?
That's one of the great things about the iPad, is that you can stay out of pirate land. You can pay. For example, Cubasis is the Steinberg's version of Cubase on the iPad. It's been updated many times. I think it's about £30,
Okay,
and
that's not bad.
it's unlimited numbers of MIDI and audio. It's got up to 96 kilohertz if you want it. It's I think it's 24-bit. I don't know if it's 32-bit, but it's, you know, it's well, you've heard stuff that's been done on it, and you've never said nobody would ever listen to it and go, that doesn't sound right. It just sounds as right as anything else. It's once you get up to that level, it's great. It's very stable, very fast. The iPads, I mean, my iPad's old now, but the iPads today are blindingly fast. So you can pile instrument upon instrument upon instrument, probably more than you can on the PC. I very seldom got latency problems, and I think now you would probably have even fewer. But yes, you have GarageBand, which is free. When last I looked, it was free, and it comes with a whole bunch of touch instruments and drummers, you know, different drum personalities and all that kind of stuff, and lots of different instruments and synths and all that kind of stuff. Synth presets. It's not a great. As far as I remember, the editing for synthesizers is very limited within GarageBand, but most people dump GarageBand quite quickly and move on to something like Cubasis. There's AUM as well. There's audio. Oh God, I can't remember the names now. There's a whole bunch of them that allow you to work in the workflow that you want to work in. I liked Cubasis best. It was just like a PC workstation, and I'd used Cubase before, so it was good for me. And then there's a whole bunch of people making apps, but the difference is, like Apparillo. I don't know how much Apparillo costs if you want to buy it. I'll just look it up just now. But it cost me on the iPad about £7 or £8 from Sugar Bytes. Let's see how much it is on here. if we can get a price for it. £99. So that's the differential. So it's a tenth of the price on the iPad. And I guess the reason they can do that is they know it's not going to get pirated. So they know there's a million musicians out there. 2% of them will buy this. We can price it at that. They don't have to think, most people use this, going to pirate it. So you get the benefit of that. The downside of that is you do have to pay for everything that you use.
But that was the one drawback. So the price of the iPad is just the starting point, and then you got to budget for software and instruments, right?
It's the software is cheap, but I must have spent thousands on software over the 10 years that I had it. In fact, I spent at least 50% of my spending money was going on apps. Some of which wouldn't work out. Yeah, but that is for anybody who's got gear acquisition syndrome. It's a shiny bauble. It's a new shiny bauble, to put into your iPad. But I don't know if would you use it that way. What would you use the iPad for? What's your use case?
Well, okay, so here So I didn't actually present it properly the way I can't stumble across it because I didn't bring my notes with me because I always forget to, or I'd rather not have them because I find I sound like a robot when I read from notes. But so the first thing was the guitar I thought about, right? And then I started, one of the pieces of gear that popped in my head was a looping station.
Oh yes, you mentioned that in your text. Yeah.
So I have a Digitech Memory Man, which is a fairly capable looping pedal. It can do two instruments into it, two instruments out. So you can have, like a guitar going to a guitar cabinet and a keyboard going to a keyboard cabinet or bass guitar or whatever. And then you can preload sounds and whatnot into like a little flash drive. So I could have pre-recorded drum loops and stuff. So it's really good for that. But you can only manipulate 2 loops. You can't really add 4. If you add more than 2 loops, you can't go back and remove them and put them back on. So when I look at these guys on YouTube, like that Davidas guy or whatever his name is, Dovidas, I'm sure you've seen him before. Mm-hmm. He's kind of he looks sort of like Steve Vai, if Steve Vai was like Hercules or Thor or something. He looks like an Icelandic guy with long blonde hair. He uses one of these really nice loop stations by Boss. I think he uses the RRC 505 Mark II, and that one's made for more like up using your hands. And then they have the RC 600, which is more foot control. You put it on, it's more for guitar players. They're $1,000, and they're the most capable looping pedal on planet. And when I did one time, I did a live Death by Design show in Kitchener one time for my radio station, where I did a bunch of Death by Design songs on the looping pedal, and I brought my iPhone 4S with me to do the Bebot solo and everything, and I did a bunch of stuff like that, and I was blown away by how well I was able to bring my ideas to the stage by myself. But with a proper looping station, I could bring more of my ideas together, right, and be more intricate and more songy. So I went on Reddit. And I was looking RC 600 versus RC 505 Mark II. Which one do you guys prefer? And everybody kept saying neither. Get an iPad and get this thing called Loop Play or Loopsy, or that's some name I forget. I saved it in my bookmarks. And the guy that was considering buying the Roland gear or the Boss gear said, nope, I'm good. I bought an iPad and I got with the software. This is amazing. I can't believe how good this is. And everybody on the forum kept talking about, yeah, fuck the pedals, man. Go iPad. So when I realized I could buy an iPad and get this free piece of software for the same price as the looping pedal, I thought, wow, now you can't run an iPad with your foot. Maybe you can if you get a MIDI controller. I don't know. But I don't see myself looping with my feet that much. I like having it up in front of me and using my hands to do it because I hate using my feet, especially if I decide to get a little stoned or something before the show. I find it really hard to operate foot pedals when I'm stoned. I can whammy pedal and volume pedal all day long, but if I have to start switching through banks and stuff on my pedal, I can get lost, and I'd rather just not go there.
Right.
I'd rather just use an amplifier at that point.
Well, in that case, you've got a good use case then, because the looping on the iPad will be better than any bit of hardware, I would think. The things you got to think about is the sort of the future value, I suppose. If you buy a piece of gear, it retains some of its value, whereas the iPad doesn't really. So there's that. The robustness of the iPad, you would probably want to connect it to USB, so you'd have to have a USB interface for it. Unless you're going to take the audio out of it, which is causes its own problems. But yeah, you could do a whole. I imagine you could do a whole performance in the iPad, just everything in there, with a pair of headphones, and then either render it and export it, or export it some other way. I'm sure most of these apps have ways of exporting using Dropbox or stuff like that. So yeah, and it means the beauty of the iPad is you then have a mobile solution you can take anywhere with you. If you're going on holiday, or you're going on a plane journey, or whatever it is that you're doing, going to a gig or whatever, you can take that with you, and it's a great tool, and it's a pleasure to use. It really is. It's so responsive, and well, all this. I don't have to sell you on an iPad. You know how good they are.
Well, yeah, and I bought the MorphWiz app one time, which is Jordan Rudess's keyboard app. It's kind of like, it was inspired by Bebop, because
it was laggy.
That was the problem, and every Android still has that problem. Android still has a latency problem. It's something to do with the Linux software.
You can't do music on Android. I looked into that. It's hardwired into the operating system. The audio and the video are addressed at different points at different times dynamically. So you can't even edit videos on Android successfully. If you wanted to add a sound track and synchronize it to a video, you can't do that, because the Android operating system will decide which comes first according to priorities that it's setting. So there's no hope. There's a few sort of gosh, what would you call them? Oh God, I can't remember the names. My memory's terrible. But there are a few apps on Android that you could use, because they don't require you to play. You just program the notes. Like, they are like loopers, but like trackers used to be, and those are okay. I think there's a one called Citrus or something. I can't remember. And those are okay because there's no synchronization required. But even if you play games on Android, you'll see that the sounds are not synchronized to the visuals particularly well.
Oh, really?
They're good enough. They are, it's, you press the button, you get the explosion, but the visuals come first. The visuals are tied to your input, and the sound sorts itself out according to like the priorities the operating system sets. So they're kind of stuck.
Ah, well, that's too bad, because I like your friend there. I just taste Apple, basically because like that. My biggest fear is investing $1,000 in an iPad and having it being a paperweight in 5 years or 4 years, or because I don't want to spend $2,000 on the new iPad, right? Because I don't. Well, first off, I don't have that kind of budget for this gift. It's not a $2,000 gift I'm getting, right? So, I was told a range. My wife said somewhere between like $800 and $1,400. Don't because it's her and her mom, and I think my parents are all kind of throwing a bit of cash and whatnot to get this gift for me. And then part of me goes like, well, I could probably get two things then that are like, because like I was looking at one of my. And this is a bit of the gear acquisition syndrome, because I try and claim I don't suffer from gas because I produce music. Because most people I know that suffer from gas don't make music. They just talk about, if I just had this one piece of gear, I could make music. Like, I've never let gear hold me back. I just continue to add more to the pile, because if there's, like before I got into synthesizers, I had no desire to make like the Bebop was enough for me, and using my EBow and lots of effects was enough for me. But then I just ran out of flavors. Like, I just got sick of eating fucking chicken curry every night. I wanted some lamb curry. So I find that pushes me that way. But obviously, like you say, my guitars and whatnot, most of the guitars I own most of these guitars were purchased more than 10 years ago. Like, they go back to my teenage years when I was living paycheck to paycheck. I'd be looking at going like, I can afford rent and a guitar. Okay, let's go to Lon McQuaid and you get a guitar.
Well, you got your priorities right. I mean, you did pay the rent first, so that was good.